Hi, I'm Susanna. Welcome back to Fatal Dates, my show about real connections in an unreal world. Today I'm going on a date with artist Mason Storm, and I want to talk to him about the prettification of the entire world. I know Mason a bit. He's the boyfriend of my friend Anita. She's a very glamorous woman. I'm trying to look quite glamorous today for my date. Got my dress on, got my tights on, got my shoes on. I'm looking forward to it. Hi, welcome back to Fatal Dates, my show about real connection in an unreal world. Today I'm so glad my guest is fantastic artist Mason Storm. And I should say that I already tried to record with Mason, and we did record earlier this week. And for reasons that I'm going to chat to when I invite Mason back in, it didn't quite work out for us, that recording, which would have been the first time that I've done a live date. So instead, we're back in the studio, and we're going to have a conversation that I hope and know is not going to be just a rehash of the conversation we had. But may I tell you, the conversation that we had was extremely interesting, and I'm extremely upset that for reasons I'm about to go into, you're not able to see that one. But we're going to have an even better one now, I'm sure. So I'm going to add Mason to the stream.
Hello
Mason,
again.
Hello again. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming back on Fatal Dates. And apologies. As I was saying, I've got this new camera, and for some reason it's very red, and then it becomes a bit less red. But we're just gonna go with it now. So, as I was saying, you and I met on Monday. It's was it Monday? Last month. Anyway, we met. It was last Tuesday. It was extremely cold. We met in your fantastic studio, and it was the first time that I've done a Fatal Date live. I'm not the world's most technically adept person when it comes to recording. I had various things, and we had a fantastic chat. Your studio was unheated, and that gave a certain edge to the conversation. But unfortunately, halfway through, my main camera stopped recording. But I've got to tell you, Mason, that's not the main reason why I've decided that I want to record again. The actual main reason, if I'm being totally honest, vanity. When you were there with, and we discussed it, and I want to talk about it again
today. I've done the brows, so they're all good.
It was not to do with vanity about you. It's to do with vanity about me. Yeah, Mason, you're wearing your belly, and I want to talk to you about your belly. And when we were in your studio, I was like, oh, you wear your belly. Why do you do that? And I don't know if you've watched this show, but I had a guest on, Prankster, who's big in the online world, Second Life, and has a fantastic avatar. And I was very judgy to him about wanting to go around with an avatar, blah, blah. But I tell you something, when I look back at the footage of you and I, it's very cold. I was in my cardi, and I was looking like my normal self. I was looking like Susanna before she started doing her Fatal Dates. And very unglamorous. What can I say? It just didn't have the edge that I feel that this show has needed and required. And Prankster, if you're watching, I'm really sorry for giving you a lot of stick about being concerned about how you look and so on and so forth. I discover I'm much more comfortable in a virtual world, behind the light of my webcam, wearing my own version of a belly, which would just be a setup and situation that I can control, where I can be glam Susanna, who is the one that does Fatal Dates, instead of regular Susanna in her comfy cardi. So what did we not talk about last time that you...
We talked about, because I used to do lots of different jobs, which involved me working around lots of people that, for want of a better word, are probably unsavoury. And I wanted to try and keep the two worlds completely apart. There was another reason that we didn't tap on, and that was just down to me not wanting to raise the subject of it again, because it's a constant subject in my life now that's become the bane. So many years ago, I for a laugh, I decided I was going to out Banksy and do a portrait of him. And all of his followers were quite, they were more than a little annoyed at me. And
for what reason? Why were Banksy's followers annoyed with you?
Well, because Banksy obviously is very secretive. Nobody knows who he is. Not many people know who he is. No one knows what he looks like, that kind of thing. I was going to paint a portrait of him, and then I was going to reveal that to the world, and then everyone would know what he looked like. So obviously his followers are screaming mad, death threats, all sorts. And because of that as well, what I said I'd do, and just to annoy the people, because I had that strange side about me, I said, well, I don't think it's very fair that Banksy should be hiding his identity. knowing full well I had this on, and everyone would go nuts saying, well, you're doing the same thing and what a hypocrite you are. And that just generated a lot of hype for the show, which in the end was fabulous. I didn't do the painting, but I revealed a picture of a monkey because he's very famous for painting monkeys. So I just did a picture of a monkey instead.
Philosophers have tried to understand the world. Our problem, however, is to change it.
That's very true, Morgan.
Mason, as you know, my show's called Fatal Dates because of Jean Baudrillard's book, Fatal Strategies. And I have learnt my dating strategies from reading Jean Baudrillard. And one of the things that he talks about, which is really why I wanted to talk to you today, is about what he calls the trans aestheticism of the world. What he means by that is in the past, that art was in one department, your social life was in another department, going for a walk at the weekend was in another department, going to work was another department. What he says has happened in our age, courtesy of amazing democratic digital technology, but that's not the only reason, is the ability to make art has been democratized. And to some extent today, the whole world has been made into an art project. And all of us, given the tools at our disposal, can sort of express ourselves in a way that we couldn't. We could consider ourselves to be artists.
I think everyone now has that thought that they need to not need necessarily express themselves, but to make themselves pretty or nicer looking, to wear better clothes for whatever reason. And it's almost become a competition. You've only got to look at things like TikTok. There'll be a million and one different people showing you how to dress, how to do your makeup, which is the best way to decorate your bedroom, all of that stuff. And I'm not entirely sure where that need for people to do that comes from. I mean, I can't. It's a lie. I mean, I know full well that I'm also known that when I go out and about with this whole thing on, that the clothes I wear are outrageous, and they're quite fashionable. They come from lots of different fashion houses, that kind of thing. Do I really need that in my real life? No, I don't. So I think the beautification of people is, again, it's like another mask. It's people can take on a persona. You put the right clothes on, you feel different. You've not got the right clothes on, you don't feel maybe so confident or able to.
And also, the arena for display is a completely different one to how it was in London in the 70s and 80s. There, the arena for display of your beautiful self in whatever clothes you managed to get together was the real world, wasn't it? It was about strutting into some club, walking up and down the high street. It was about the effect that you're having in the world. Whereas now, a lot of it is designed so that it's going to look good on your social media screen. It's going to look good on screens, and it's not you're peacocking for a different place. And in a way, that's just a cheat because before one might hanker after your Chanel handbag or whatever, and you'd have to pay money or find some canny way of acquiring it. But now it's not even so much about acquiring the thing. It's about acquiring the look that would suggest that you have the thing.
Contemporary society is filled to the brim with signs and representations of things that are so far removed from the thing itself that the sign becomes more familiar and appears more real than the thing it is made in reference to. One loses the ability to differentiate between the genuine and the artificial.
I don't think you can have a media presence or an online presence like some people do, like myself, without being slightly narcissistic or ego-driven. I like to think I'm not. I like to think that when this comes off, I'm, the lovely, straightforward, no-nonsense kind of guy. But no, if that was me, then this wouldn't go on. So maybe I'm narcissistic. I don't know. I mean, that would be for others to tell me. I like to think I'm not. Tell everybody I'm not.
Is it? Do you think, therefore, in order to make art or to be a writer or to do anything these days, you have to be narcissistic because you're going to have to use these channels as a way to promote your work?
I mean, I don't know whether narcissistic's the right word. I think you need.
I understand. All right. I'm just using a shorthand. You have to be someone unembarrassed to self-promote and not a blushing wallflower, whereas previously artists often used to be blushing wallflowers, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things about a lot of artists that are doing very well, I mean, there are lots and lots of artists out there today that lots of people you never heard of, and they're doing very, very well for themselves. And they are doing that because they are all over Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. Sometimes their work's not what I would call of the highest caliber, but one of the things that really helps sell it for them is their backstory.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot
of commodification of yourself. I think that's what I'm talking about. Instead of being a narcissist, what I'm saying is the ability to self-commodify, to tell your story, to have a backstory, to have a look, to have condensed yourself down to a brand. And in my understanding of that, what that means is to have massively simplified yourself to a certain extent, to have decided yourself what previously an advertising agency might have done for you, to say, I do these 3 things, my look is this and this, my best side is this one rather than that one. We're kind of in the realm where most people know what their good side is now, although I haven't worked out which mine is, and I probably should.
Generally. Well,
okay, but the ability to self-commodify, it's a necessity if you want to get on in the creative sphere.
When I had this discussion with Grayson Perry a couple of years ago, he was doing a talk, and he said, sorry, I've turned up in dungarees. I know everyone's expecting the man in the dress. And he went on and on and on, and he was saying about blah, 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 he doesn't wear the dress all the time, that people recognise. And I said, he said, and everyone was being very polite to him. I just said, can I just ask, the whole point about you wearing the dress, and you know, you dress as a lady in your private life, etc. But do you now not feel that now Grayson Perry, the artist, has now become Grayson Perry, the what some people would call slightly eccentric artist who wears a dress, and that's your brand now? You've been, like you say, you've been commodified. He is a brand, and the whole Claire second persona is something that he needs to do in the forward Grayson Perry, the artist. And I said, you know, have you just turned into a brand as opposed to an artist who dresses like this? Are you now someone who dresses like this that happens to do art? And he was perplexed. He said, maybe I am. He said, maybe that is the whole point now. Maybe that is what people know me for. So it's rather than Grayson Perry, the fabulous potter or ceramicist who happens to cross-dress, he's now the cross-dresser who's very flamboyant, who happens to do art.
But I put the same question to you. I mean, you've got a similar thing going on. Are you Mason Storm the persona or Mason Storm the artist? Same question to you.
I think they mesh together. I think there's a bit of him in me and a bit of me in him. And some days I'm a bit more Mason, sometimes I'm a bit more the other one. So it's a difficult thing to do because I mean, like, for example, Mason isn't my first name, but everyone, close friends included, just apart from family, really, family are the only people that don't call me Mason. And it's as natural to me as if someone would call me by my other name. So I think you sort of slip into that where you morph into the characters and you just go back and forth. There's an actress of a certain genre and she has the name Mason Storm. So that's probably why people are quite disappointed when they meet me. But I had a kid once said, or the mum spoke to me and said, she's doing a project about you at school. And okay, great. She said, yeah. So she was standing next to the teacher and said, I want to do a project on an artist. His name's Mason Storm. So the teacher went on, Mason Storm, clicked it. Up come all these rather unsavoury pages, and she got called into the office straight away because they got a security thing on the computers at the schools. If any porn pops up. So yeah, that was an awkward one for them. But
so you just create, I mean, you and your personas are just creating controversies wherever you go.
Happiness, written in letters of fire behind the least little advert for bath salts or the Canary Islands, is the absolute reference of the consumer society. It is the strict equivalent of salvation. But what is this happiness which haunts modern civilization with such ideological force? Here again one has to revise all spontaneous conceptions. The ideological force of the notion of happiness does not originate in a natural propensity on the part of each individual to realize that happiness for himself. It derives, socio-historically, from the fact that the myth of happiness is the one which, in modern societies, takes up and comes to embody the myth of equality.
The other thing Baudrillard says is this trans-aestheticism of the world is yet another part of the project of turning us all into white men. And the prioritization of beauty as the thing that we all care about the most, is because we're looking with all of us and the technology which has been built by white men, more or less, apart from many thousands of people in China who've also been building it. And now, of course, in the world, it's been diffused and many people do build it. But in its incipient from white men and the prioritization of beautiful things, he says, is the way that men look at the world, where what they want to see is pretty objects, which could be women, which could be objects, but pretty others that decorate the world. And that's what the world is for white men, eye candy. And that's what we've all become trained to see the world as eye candy. What I'm talking about here is two sorts of ways of experiencing attraction. One is by being a pair of eyes that likes to look at pretty things so that you can have them. And the other is about being a pretty thing that wants eyes to look at you and to be attracted to you. And I think what he's saying is that there used to be a duality of you could be something that wants the thing, or you could be the thing. And we're all taught now by digital technology, but also by capitalism, that we should all become the thing that wants the thing, because that's what capitalism is. Capitalism makes us all into shoppers. And therefore, the power of being on the other side of it, which used to be called the power of being a woman, the power of being an object, which is obviously something that many women are uncomfortable with considering themselves as. But I think it's worth having the discussion that we're all told it's bad to be an object and it's good to be a subject, and it's good to be there in the world with your eyes, wanting to look at the pretty things, wanting to acquire the pretty things.
I think it's very true. And I'm not entirely sure. I mean, the discussion has raged for years and years. Why do women need to make themselves look pretty, for want of a better word again? I've got to keep saying that. But it's almost, when they say, for example, I'm going to put on makeup for myself.
Yeah.
Is it 100% that? Or is it, in putting on this makeup for myself, I am then, and again, don't want to use the term, an object of desire for somebody else? Or is it just, I'm making myself pretty because I want to feel confident and pretty today?
Okay, well, I will answer that. I'm just going to speak impersonally in the third person, by no means talking about myself here, Mason, you'll understand, entirely talking hypothetically. It is fun to be an object for some women. I'm not talking about myself here, obviously. It is fun to be an object. It is fun, although it's told it's the very worst thing that you could possibly be, to be objectified. It's dreadful. Who would want to be objectified? What Baudrillard says is objects have more power than subjects, that if you look closely at any object, it's laughing at you. If you look at your cushion there that says meh behind you, it's having a laugh. It's got a function. It knows what it's up to. It's got more power than you. It's got more status and dignity in the world. And hypothetically speaking, woman puts on makeup, puts on some sexy outfit, goes out in the world, attracts a certain energy. And there is joy, pleasure, power, joie de vivre in having that energy. And why is that a bad thing, hypothetically speaking?
I don't think it is a bad thing, not at all. But like you said,
the interesting is, why does society tell us it's a bad thing?
When a lady dresses up the way she wants to, I think rather than being objectified, I think she has the power.
Yes,
for a better word, not to say the word, I mean object, just in the round. So that lady's then the object of attention, and she then holds the power. So
she holds the power. The subject wants her.
Absolutely.
Has to wait for her to decide whether or not she's gonna go for him or her or not. We're not just talking about men and women here, but I'm using men and women as a shorthand in these discussions because it gets too clumsy to talk about it in other ways. Exactly. The object has the power, yet we're all told that the subject has the power.
I think that's part of the problem. I think, once again, that's in a general term, the male ego, or males, females, whichever, that the person who is chasing the object seems to feel that they're the one, that they've got the power, they're in charge, they're going to go and get that. But then if that object turns around and says, no, I'm fine, thanks, it's completely wiped out their whole day. That's it, they're done. And I think that's empowering, especially for women, because, as we know, women have had a rough ride for many, many years in the fact that they've been the subject or the object, but they haven't had the power. I think now, with the rise in feminism in a way that is empowering, I think feminism, as much as women got the vote, which was fantastic, but I don't think it gave them any real power. But I think women now have a lot more power as the object than they ever did, and that is as it should be.
There's a sort of, there's lots to be said about that. There is a lot of feminism. Okay, it's obviously fantastic to have equal rights. It's obviously fantastic to vote. It's obviously fantastic to own property, to be your own self in the world. But there is also a sense that the world, which was a world created by men, it's not always been that way, but the civilization that we currently live in, 3,000 years old, there are early ones and ones in other countries that are not like this. So it would be wrong to say this is just the way it is one devised by men. And there is an argument definitely that says, but women, it's been designed by men to control women to some degree, to control women, to have a say over what ugly man gets what gorgeous woman. One could even argue, and I certainly have argued this, that capitalism, those sorts of systems are at root sex crimes, that they're designed, in the most basic fundament of why they come from. They come from male vulnerability to women. They come from a desire to control women. The desire, the creation of money is at the root of what these cultures and societies are about. And money is a token that allows you to some degree, an important purpose of it is it allows you to offset the lack of your own personal virtues, production skills, everything, with this token that then can buy you things, including objects, including sometimes if you call women objects. But what I'm trying to say in a very roundabout way here is the acquiring of status within this world is not the be all and end all. And to some degree, I think it's a cunning plan. I think to some degree, and I think this because I've been reading my Baudrillard, and he says this too, that all the projects of liberation that happened from the Enlightenment on, that came to fruition after World War II and the so-called liberation movements, to some degree, they're just a massive con to women, because what they say is, okay, you can become a man if you want to. But what they do is they say, you have, okay, we'll let you step in and become a subject, but we will not let you talk too much about your joy of being an object, because that's obscene and we don't want that. Because I think that's a very destabilizing power, because as you said, once the object is the one who secretly has the power, and it seems to me in a very generalized way, men's project to want to cut away at that power of women, almost to forget it. Sometimes what I think is men don't want women, and again, I'm talking the shorthand of men and women. It doesn't necessarily map onto male body, woman bodies. But men want women not to understand the tremendous power that women have over them. But at the same time, men despise any woman who doesn't know her true power. What do you think about that?
I think it's an awkward one. I think what you were saying earlier about the ability to own their own property and own it. I think the thing now, which is most exciting, is that women have got to own themselves now. So they don't need that man. Again, we're generalizing, but they don't need that man to pay the mortgage, and they don't need that man to give them that job. They can own it themselves, and they can bait, like you say, once again, they've got the power and they own themselves. And I think that's the main thing about any liberation for anyone, whether it's sexual, political, artistic. If you can own yourself or own what you do, then you've won. You have the power regardless. Again, that's a very general term. As we know, some women and some men in relationships have to stay in relationships because they don't have the financial means to move away from that. And I think it's very, very difficult to own yourself when you're in that kind of context. But I think things are changing now to such a degree that you get. I mean, I know I've been to quite a few pubs, and you do still get men that I mean, it's not for me. I'm not just trying to show myself as an enlightened male of the species, but the way men talk about women, and it happens all the time, and you still see it, and you think, guys of my age and younger, and you just think, you must know by now that model no longer works. It doesn't work for the women. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for society.
What are these men saying? What sort of things are they saying?
The usual one. It's an old classic that the guys used to say all the time. Hello, darling, you're right. Do you want a drink? No, lesbian. It's like, right. And even if she was, what's wrong with that?
To me, the secret seems to be that we all think that we know we've got a checklist and we know what it is that we want. But the real truth is, the real pleasure comes from something that you didn't know at all would be the thing that you wanted. That blows your mind.
Yeah, it's straight out of the blue, and I think that's the thing with connections. I don't think if you're going to make a connection with someone, like for example, online dating, they must give you a checklist. You want someone that's 6'4", you want someone that's got abs, you want someone that's got blue eyes and blonde hair, etc., etc. And you might get that. And you've seen it many, many times on TV shows where they do TV dating. They give them, that's what you asked for. And 15 minutes into the show, I don't like him, he's an absolute idiot. And I think that's very telling on the way things are changing now. I think people are looking more for connection rather than just the superfluous bits and bobs that go with it.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm not altogether convinced. I think that we're all, sometimes I think it's going the opposite way. I think that we're all just computers, internet, the ability to do data analytics makes us all, okay, well, I'm like this. I like this. I need someone who's like this. I need someone who's, whatever, INTP on the Myers-Briggs scale. I can get very precise about what it is that I want, and I get precise about who I am, but it's all for shit, really. None of us know who we are, and none of us knows what we really want. And what we really want is something to appear out of nowhere and give us intense surprise, shock, pleasure. And I don't know, I think that we're all becoming a lot less likely to find that. But then maybe that's just me. Mason, I think that's been really a very interesting day. And can I say a very different date to the one that we had?
I've got a second date. It rarely happens. I think that was a good second date. I had one truck with Baudrillard.
Yeah.
He's quite down on relationships, I thought. They've got one of the quotes he said. And I thought, that's a bleak outset. He said, to love someone is to isolate them from the world, wipe out every trace of them, dispossess them of their shadow, drag them into a murderous future, and circle around them like a dying planet, dragging them into the dark.
That is because, okay, so he's down on love. He says love is a Christian invention. He says love is something that's like a religion. It's something that we're told is going to be good for us, and we're going to meet this thing. It's called love. X, Y, and Z happen. He says it's an invention by the superstructures of society to contain us. And he doesn't like love. What he likes is seduction. So he says seduction is a game that you play with somebody out. So love is something public. You do it in public. You get married. You got the big civic, whatever. Love is a civic thing, a religious thing, a public thing. But he says the pleasure of life is when you step back from this thing called love and you do something that he calls seduction, which is where two people have an interaction that is more like a game with rules, rituals that they've invented themselves, and in which you would never say the words, I love you, because that would be to drop the ball. That everything, if you say those words, you have betrayed the relationship you have, because you're bringing it. Another of the quotes that you're taking these from my Instagram feed, but another of the quotes from my Instagram feed is, he says, if you say, I love you, that means you have fallen in love with language, which it itself is a betrayal and the beginning of the end of your love. As soon as you use those words, what you're doing is dragging the private pleasure of that relationship into the public sphere to display it on an Instagram feed, to show people, oh, look, I'm here. I found love. I love. Therefore, I do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to what he says seduction is, human connection really is, which is a very radical force that's very much an FU to society, where you step out of society. You don't use those words. You don't lie. You play a game with somebody. And by not saying those words, by not being too sincere in your words ever, but being sincere in the loyalty that the ritual of the loyalty that you play out with that person, and the fact that you would never betray them, but you never say to them, I will never betray you, but you can do it without words. He says that is the place that you should get to. And I agree. I have to say that. I do agree. I think I grew up with lots of ideas about love, and I think those ideas were untrue ideas that were not useful to me, and they were about wanting something for myself to perhaps display to other people. And in my old age, maybe, it's entirely theoretical for me, and I could well be wrong, but that's part of what this project is and why I'm talking to people. In my old age, what I'm interested more in is those discussions which used to be called seduction, rather than, our kindred souls and you're my soulmate.
Right, okay. Well, I'm going to give that to Anita next time. And if you see me with a black eye the following day, I've followed your script.
Okay. On that note, thank you so much for our second fatal date. It was great. And looking forward to seeing you in the real world with Anita.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Bye.
relatively.
I'm sure it had started perhaps, I mean, I'm no historian of porn, but my understanding it started a long time, maybe even before that, if we're talking about...
I mean, it goes back. I mean, if anything, you know, possibly the first human art was porn. There's the kind of the Venus, the Venus figurines and so on, which go back tens of thousands of years.
But there's an absolutely, for me, and I really want to get into and talk about this, there's an absolutely massive difference between a pictorial representation of porn and a photo or a video image of porn. Those two things are different things. And
so it goes back to the beginning of the camera, to the invention of the camera.